Paul Barry, architect for Transformation Advisor. And in this one-take video, I'm going to run through everything that's new in Transformation Advisor 3.0. So if I jump straight in and take a look at what's in our What's New section, you're going to see there's a lot of information in here. Transformation Advisor 3.0 introduces lots of new concepts and is a very significant step forward for Transformation Advisor. So the first thing to talk about is the recommendations. We now display your recommendations for your workspace. We've amalgamated all of your profiles and all of your collections, and we identify common code for you, and we give you an effort estimate for the entire workspace, taking into account the fact that the code that's common between your different applications will only need to be modernized once. In terms of the hierarchy within Transformation Advisor, you no longer need to create any collections. We auto detect the collections for you when you're uploading your data. Your data collector won't be tied anymore to a specific collection. Instead, you're going to have one data collector for your whole workspace. Data uploaded is going to automatically have its collection identified. The data collector also uses the binary scanner 21004, which supports moving to Java 17 for Liberty targets. We have some improvements around data upload to automatically detect your collection or let you choose a collection. In terms of installation, to support all these new capabilities, we've introduced a graph database. So if you're on OCP, you're going to need 2 persistent volumes now instead of 1. You're also going to need those persistent volumes to be read-write once. And those persistent volumes are going to be 20 gigs in size and 5 gigs in size. In terms of deprecations and removals, we're deprecating the MQ plugin. So it's going to be removed in future releases. And the business applications capability has been removed entirely in Transformation Advisor 3.0. Okay, let's dive in and take a look at what's going to be different. So in this case, I have Transformation Advisor 3.0. I've already uploaded some data. So I'm going to click straight in. The very first thing to see is on this overview screen, we've now divided the data into workload types. So you have a Java workload type here, and you have an MQ workload type. So previously that would have been a list of collections. That's no longer the case. It's always going to be about workloads. So if you upload lots of different Java applications into the same workspace, they're going to live in the same workload type. Okay, so I'm going to click in. And immediately what you're going to see that's different is on the right-hand side here at the top, you've got an estimate of the effort level for your entire workspace. So that's where I'm going to start talking first. So the first thing is that in this particular workspace, we can see an estimate for our common code is 11.5 days. So what is common code? Common code is one of two things. It's code that is in a shared library in your source app server that was scanned. So that's code that you have explicitly indicated as being common. And the other case is we now scan through all of the applications that are uploaded. We look at all of the jars inside it, and using a combination of name and checksum, we identify where those jars are the same. And in that case, we count them as common code. And what we're seeing in practice is that most customers have a lot of common code, 60, 70, 80% of their actual code within their applications is common code. And if you have the same jars in 5 or 6 applications, you only need to make modifications to them once to modernize them. And that's what that common code is. So when you have any jar that appears in more than one application, it's common code. So the next line here is we have our unique app code. So what's that? That's the code that sits in your application that isn't shared with any other application. You're going to have to modernize that code yourself uniquely for each application. And then obviously in this case, we have a total cost as well, which in essence says that there's 27 days development effort to modernize every application within this workspace. That total cost as well also takes into account the fact that you will see the same issues repeated across many of your applications. So we factor in a reduction in effort for your modernization there as well. The next thing is if we take a look at your migration targets, just click on our little eye there, you can see that we have three migration targets. You've got your Open Liberty, your WebSphere Liberty, your WebSphere Traditional. You can select any and all of those combination of targets. And in the past, you would have seen that for WebSphere Liberty, we would have only provided you information on that when it was different to its Open Liberty equivalent. But now what happens is that we give you an entry for WebSphere Liberty for every application. So it just makes it much easier. If you've decided WebSphere Liberty is your migration target of choice, then you'll see an entry for every application. And what you can see here is we've got our Open Liberty, our WebSphere Liberty, our WebSphere Traditional. When you select multiple targets, you'll also see a slight change up here in your estimated total costs, and we will give you your overall estimate, not the breakdown of common code and unique app code. You can select a single target to see that. So what you can see here is pretty much what you would expect. Open Liberty is a little bit more effort to go to than WebSphere Liberty, and there's significantly less effort to go to WebSphere Traditional, which is your WebSphere base and containers. So I'm just going to hop back there and we're going to focus on Open Liberty for this video. You also have an option around collections. So one of the changes that we've made is that now when data is uploaded, we automatically detect the collection, and that's going to be the host name where the data came from. And you can pick, any of these that you're interested in, and that's going to filter the table down here to represent only data from that particular collection. I think the big change here is in the past, collection was a kind of a hierarchical item. Now it's just an attribute. It's just an information to say, where did these applications come from? What's the name of the host? And if you don't have any selected, then by default, we show you all collections. So if we take a look at the rows inside in our table, this will be quite familiar. We've got the Java application name, the collection and profile it's come from, its complexity, its issues. What's a little bit different now is that we indicate the number of common code files that exist in this application and the total application cost in days. The key thing about looking at this table is that each row is considered in isolation. So what we're saying is that if you decide to modernize just this first application, then that's going to be 10 days worth of development effort. If you just decide to modernize that second application here, it's going to be 12 days. So if you were to add up these straight away, you can see 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 odd development days. But up here we see our actual total for the workspace is only 27 days. And why is that? Again, it goes back to the idea of the fact that these applications are sharing common code and you need to pay the modernization effort for those only once. So if I have to modernize this application, the fact that there's common code doesn't help me. But once I've modernized this application, if I go onto another application, it may use some of the same common code. That doesn't also then have to be modernized. Your overall cost for your workspace, is less than if I add up each of these applications. So if we take a look at our first application, for example, what can we see about it? We can see it uses two common code files. Here you can see the common code effort is 10 days. The unique app code effort is no days. So to modernize this, all of the code that requires effort to modernize is actually in code that is common, and that code is also being used by other applications. So that's our first application. If we take a look at the second application on the list, you can see something quite similar. You can see common code is 10 and a half days, unique app code is 2 days. Total cost is 12. We do a little bit of rounding for simplicity. But here's the key thing is if you look at the common code used, you can see that annuity jar is appearing in both. So if I was to click into that annuity jar and take a look at what's here, you can see that all of these 5 applications are using it. And if you look at each one in isolation, you're going to see that cost of 10 days to do the modernization. But instead here, what you're going to say is that actually, if I spend that 10 days modernizing, then most of the work will be completed for all of these other applications as well. Now, if I just jump into one of these applications, the other thing, this is the detail for the application now, and it shows you all the jars that common code files that are being used. But one of the other things that's worth noting is that within our issues, the common code issues and the unique code issues have been split out. Now, if I jump back into my, if I jump back into my Java workload, the other thing that's worth noting here is our tab. So we've got our Java applications. We also have our Common Code files. So if you click into that, you'll get the full list of Common Code files across your entire workspace. Now, what we see in practice, this is a small data set, this is demo data. What we see with our customers' data sets is that you might have 3, 4, 500 applications. You might have 1,500, 2,000 Common Code files. So, what we've given you the capability is inside in your export, we can export out all of that data, and that's going to give us a zip file. Let me just have a look at it in my Finder. And if I explode out that zip file, this is for OpenLiberty, and take a look at the breakdown, you're going to see a number of different things. You're going to see all the details of applications in one section, all the details of your common code in another section. But what you're also going to get is your PDFs and your CSVs. And the CSVs are very important here because they're going to provide you enough data when you have hundreds or thousands of common code elements and hundreds and potentially thousands of applications. The CSV files will give you a nice way to manipulate, look at your data, sort it, order it, help you in your actual planning of your proof of concept, and then onto your full modernization project. So if you can take a look, you can take a look here, and you can see here are all my common code files. Here's my complexity. Here are whether they're shared libraries or dynamically discovered common code, the number of apps that are using them. You also see a list of all of the actual specific apps that are using them. And what we've also provided as well as IDs that you can use with the APIs. Our applications are going to look very similar. And these indicate their complexity, the complexity of any common jars associated with them. And that's something that's interesting because you can have a case where your application is simple, but its associated common jars are moderate. So you'll actually, you won't be able to move that, you won't be able to modernize that application without making some changes. Okay, so that's a kind of a whistle-stop tour of what's new. What I also just wanted to show was what happens when you create a new workspace now, because the flow is a little bit different. Okay, so what happens now when you create a new workspace? So you're prompted for the workspace name. I'm going to call this demo. You're not going to be prompted for a collection name. So we click create. That's going to create a workspace. We're going to jump in here, and your options are download your data collector. So you can download this as normal. The key thing here is that in the past, your data collector would have been associated with a collection. Now it's not, it's just associated with the workspace because we auto detect the collection information. So that's one. And then the other option, of course, is you can, if you already have your data, you can upload it. So when you choose to upload it here, you can see you have different options. So you can auto detect the collection. So let me just drag in a file there. So let's say we're going to just push in this particular um, bit of data that I have. So I'm uploading this. When this uploads, you're going to see that the collection has been automatically detected. And what you can see here in your list of collections is it's identified automatically the machine that that came from. Your other option, of course, when you upload your data is that you may choose not to do auto detection. You can select an existing collection to push into, or you could enter a collection name. And the reason you might find that you may need to do this is because depending on your source environment, particularly with virtual machines, either your host names aren't meaningful, or you could end up with the same host names across profiles that are actually from different machines. So it just gives you an immediate option on upload to customize the name of the collection. And here you can see your collection. You can see it's my own.